Welcome, Mr. Ranganath. Can you listen to me?
Yeah, can you hear me? I can hear you.
Okay, okay. Your camera is off, I suppose.
Camera is 1 second. Yeah, it's on now.
Yeah, Mr. Okay, welcome, welcome. I think there was some problem initially in the link. I was told. I think Mr.
This is Rajkumar. Am I audible? Can somebody reconfirm me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Welcome, welcome,
we
Mr.
can hear you
Rajkumar.
clearly.
Welcome, Mr.
Yeah, thank you.
I think three main moderators are still to join. One will join. Mr. Pai will join around 12, so he won't be joining straight away. Mr. Manish Agarwal is having a problem joining, and let me see.
सिद्धेश जी और डॉक्टर रॉडनी का
हाँ
उनका 12-5 को हाँ बाद में है
वो 12 बजे आएंगे नहीं वो अलग अलग कंबाइन कर दिया है दोनों गलत इन्होंने भेजा था Mr. Rangnath, we are just waiting for two more panelists to join.
No problem.
I'll start in 3-4 minutes.
Absolutely, no problem.
जिसमें कि वो काफी उनका अपना डिस्प्ले एक्सेस है
Welcome, Rajeshwar Rao. Welcome for joining. Rajeshwar Rao, you can hear me?
It doesn't seem to be.
I think he's still. Mr. Rajeshwar, can you hear me? Rajeshwar? Dr. Rodney Revere joined. Dr. Rodney, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. I had some technical problems. I'm on
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. Yeah, initially. I think we were
I hope you
waiting
can
just
hear
for
me.
some.
Yeah,
I can hear
it's
you
loud
well
and clear.
and clear.
Okay, great, good to hear. Okay, then I'll stand by.
Just one more minute, Mr. Manish Sabarwal. He's the other panelist, and Mr. Pai has said that he will join by 12. He is busy on an international video conference, and he will join by 12. But I think others, Mr. Manish is still to join. Welcome everyone. I think Mr. Manish will be joining. Happily, I think the link issue is there. So we are sending a revised link to him. So welcome all, and thanks to all of you for consenting to join this webinar, a consultation process on improving skilling in the context of the budget announcements related to skilling. So we have 5 presenters. Sri Ranganath, who is the in the Grundas Water Ambassador Limited, and he has been part of the CIA National Committee on Water and has been involved closely in the skilling process. Then we have Mr. Manish Agarwal, who is the chairman and co-founder of Team Lead Services, and you know all about him. We have read articles from him. Then we have Dr. Rodney Rivere, program head of GZ IGV. I think YouTube also is live. So I'll start again, perhaps for the purpose of YouTube. Welcome all of you to this webinar on making India skill capital of the world, with a focus to get views on how to improve the skilling ecosystem, with a special focus on the two budget announcements regarding skilling which has been made, and how to go about implementing them so that they become the most effective way of implementing it. We have 5 panelists here: Sri Rangnath, Sri Manish Agarwal, Dr. Rodney Rivera, Dr. Mohandas Pai, and Sri Rajkumar Sambandam, Director and CEO Navis. So the way I plan to, since we have 1.5 hours, what I will do, I will just, to set the context, I have a small 4-slide presentation which I will make in the beginning, and after that the panelists can speak for 10 minutes each, followed by we will have almost a half an hour of question answer session. There are some people who are active but participating, they may ask questions, or some panelists may ask questions to other panelists also. We will leave it open ended, and I assure you all the suggestions given will go as inputs in finalizing the policy regarding the budget announcements. So let me share the presentation. Just a minute. Sharing cassette. Can you see the presentations?
Yes.
Yes, I see it.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. It's a small one. I'll rush through it because I want to hear you and not to speak. So just as a setting the context, I would like to just highlight that since this ministry was formed in 2014, and the last 6 years, what we have been able to achieve, a lot of physical infrastructure in terms of training centers, ITIs, apprentice establishment, that has grown up. The right table on the top shows that the way ITIs have gone up by 50%. Apprenticeship establishment has almost gone up 4 times, and short-term training courses have almost again gone up 4 times. So in this 5 years, 5.5 crore people have been trained through the central government skilling system, including Ministry of MSD, NSDC and its associates. Welcome, Mr. Savarwal. We have just started. I'm just setting the context, and then I'll come back and just brief you again that how we plan to go about it. And then uh, uh, in the short-term skilling system also, a lot of work has gone on, which was very sporadic before 2015 through the PMKY programs and through the effort of NSDC. A good army of training partners have been created, around almost 10,000 training partners who are there, training centers there, who give the short-term training, including some model training, short-term training centers in the form of Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras, one in each district. Then apprenticeship also, a lot of effort has gone by to liberalize it, instead of the regulatory regime to the self-regulation regime. We have amended both the act and the rules, and also brought in a new scheme called NAPS to help the industry to pay stipend to the apprentices. Long-term training also has been focusing on improving the quality, efficiency, and for towards the quality grading of ITIs is being done. Partnership of industry has been the focus is on increasing by tying up with the industry and having MOU with them. On 1,000 MOUs have been signed with the industry, where the training takes place in the industry itself. The most important, I say, in the long term is the setting of a unified skills regulator, which will be instrumental in creating an ecosystem, rules-based ecosystem, leading to accountability, transparency, and acceptability of the skilling work which is going on. Then a new effort recently has been to go down to the districts in the form of district skill committee. A greater role has been given to them. So far, it has been diversed from the skilling work. Then the convergence has been thought of, attempted across the skilling schemes of the government of India through various efforts like common portal, data conversion, common cost, skilled persons jobs through a same portal, training partners through a smart portal. All those things have been taken place. So now that is not the end. I mean, I think still skilling is still at the very incipient stage, and we have planned some reforms. One is the ITI system, which is basically the supplier of the workforce for the industry. We plan to increase the access and quality in these ITIs, the long-term training increase. Short-term training also, we want to bring in the youth choice in that, youth demand driven. So it's not a training partner driven, it becomes a youth demand driven and focus more on reskilling and upskilling of people who would like to, because of disruptions and change in the technology, etc., would like to reskill and upskill themselves. One important challenge is combining the school and higher education, especially when the new education policy is also mandating the same. So we are trying to work with the school education department, higher education department for more synergy, both for exposing the students of school education to skilling and enabling higher education people to get skilled while they are performing the higher education studies. UGC, as we must have known, that UGC has already brought in the degree embedded apprenticeship regulations. We want to expand it further. Then other thing is that while Apprenticeship Act amendment tried to liberalize it, we want to do it much more. We want to enable ease of doing apprenticeship by amending the act and the rules, and a lot of suggestions which Mr. Sabharwal was also instrumental in giving. We have tried to will try to incorporate, and more we suppose we will get now. And the last is the most important, which has been our weakest link, that we should target people not to just search for employment, for wage employment, self-employed. So we are trying to create an ecosystem which will enable micro and nano entrepreneurship. So our skilled graduates become entrepreneur. A person who is get trained in retail or is able, or in beauty, is able to open a local shop. We are not thinking of the startups and all that trillion and unicorns. We are talking of small entrepreneurs, the roadside. A khomcha wala can start, can how he can go up the value chain by creating his own shop and add value to his products. And also perhaps e-commerce for marketing, if it is a national or global market, then also e-commerce, linking up to the e-commerce website so that you can market his product, apart from linking to loan, mentorship, all those things. So these are the broad areas of reforms. But there are two announcements which are made in the budget. One thing was that we need to amend the Apprentices Act to make it more friendly, to enhance the opportunities of apprenticeship for the youth. So we are planning a few things in this, like we like to expand the establishment. This is all suggestions which are there in our mind, and we are open to any additions, subtractions, modifications. Basically, some of the things I have listed out. I'll just go through one by one. That we want to increase the scope of establishments by including training institutions, etc., where also apprenticeship can be done. Then we want to, during the formal education system, perhaps a part-time apprenticeship, which is not linked to the education system. It's not like the UGC embedded degree where the credit courses go into the degree itself. It's the additional, someone wants to do apprenticeship over the weekend, over the vacation period, that kind of a structure. Enabling structure, we like to bring it so that if someone wants to do, even if the university does not permit them to combine their formal education with apprenticeship, they can do as an add-on for getting an additional qualification. Then nowadays, with so many institutions, establishments having the client working in the mode where you work at the client site, be in India, be abroad. So we want to enable that. Apprentices can also be done with the client site, not only at the main factory where you are there. If you are working with the client, especially in the IT industry, this will be very useful. And then presently there's a strict provision of virtual learning, theoretical learning, which has to be given by the establishment. We want to allow virtual delivery of this theoretical learning also. For establishments, two, three things we want to do. One thing is that the strict contract provision, which prevents a lot of establishments to enter into apprenticeship, because they have to sign with each trainee apprentice, they have to sign a contract, which is a painful process. So we want to enable the third party aggregators to do it on the behalf. They can have one contract with the establishment, and the multiple contracts they can in turn sign with each of the apprentices. Then we want to remove this process of contract approval, which takes time, which delays things, and come up with just contact intimation. If there's something problem in the contract, the apprenticeship advisor will advise that this may be changed. And penalty also, I think one step was taken by moving it from jail, etc., to penalty of fine, but still a penalty, and it's a tortuous process to go to the court and all that. I think we have to change it to executive fine, not a legal penalty which has to go through the court process. And then we want this whatever protection for apprentices which is relevant from the labor code, which can be included, we want to bring it in. No, not everything, because apprentices are not labor. That is very clear, and we don't want to compromise that part. That apprentice is not a substitute for labor. But whatever protection is possible, already there are some provisions that are possible. We want to bring it in. And next one, which this is Honorable Prime Minister stresses on this, that India should become the skill capital of the world. We should be in a position to send our skilled persons to countries, especially in the light of the fact that we have the demographic advantage with a less dependent population, while most of the developed countries have an aged population. We already have two agreements with Japan. I mean, that is specifically mentioned in the budget also, that with Japan on the sending of interns. And now we have just signed on sending of skilled workers for actual working there in 14 sectors. The modalities of the second one is being discussed with the Japanese and MEA, Japanese team and the MEA. The first one is already operational, and some set of persons have already been sent. UAE also, we have been able to map some qualifications, around 15 Indian qualification with the 13 UAE qualification, and so that assessments can be taken here on the benchmark qualification, and they can be sent. A small batch, a pilot batch of 100 people have been assessed under this, but it's a very small thing. Towards this end, we had done a global skill gap study in 2019-20. The report was submitted in 2020, which analyzed 15 countries, and based on that, they identified there are almost 38 lakh jobs which are available over 5 years will arise. This is addition to the replacement jobs. This is not the replacement jobs which anyway they will fill up locally. And but problem is very much that each country has a unique immigration regime, visa requirement, regulatory provisions are different. Some have quotas, some will allow skilled workers, some will not allow skilled workers. So all these issues are there. Some allow only high-tech workers, not the skilled workers. So we have to prepare country-wise strategy. I also had a meeting with most of the employment agencies who are proficient in sending people abroad, and all the Indian International Skill Centers. A lot of good feedback was done. So in nutshell, these are the two announcements. So again, for the benefit of Mr. Sabrawal, so we have 5 panelists. What we'll do, we'll go through each of the panelists, and first they can speak for 10 minutes, and the balanced half an hour time which we have, that we can spend on a question answer session. And others who are who are not the panelists but who are enabled, they can raise their hands, and based on their I'll just first this thing I'll share the presentation just a minute. Yeah, so we will so I'll go by the order which is there, and I'm not limiting you to any one topic or any two topics. you can go also beyond and talk about the skill development, but definitely I'd like you to tell about these, to how to go about, as the Honorable Prime Minister also stressed in the morning speech, that time for new policies is now over with the budget announcement. Now it's time for implementing the budget announcements. So we want a greater inputs on how to implement it so that they become effective, not a tick marking. Okay, we have amended the act, tick marked. We have been able to sign MOUs with 5 countries, tick mark. I don't want that. We want that something which will be effective. I think I'll go by the order instead of being accused of being selective and asking one person first, one person second, and being accused of having preferences. So, Mr. Rangnath, Gunfos Water Ambassador, I think from the Gunfos Private Limited, and which is, I think he has about 37 years of experience in HR, marketing, everything, whatever you have, he has the experience. And please, Mr. Rangnath.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Army to
I am going to focus on what we were supposed to talk on, basically making India the skill capital of the world, although there are other subjects that I will briefly touch upon. One good thing is that whatever you said now, the intent of the government is very clear. You are trying to make things a little easier for everybody, and there is no doubt that without extensive industry participation, when I mean industry, I'm meaning in a more broader sense, including commercial establishments, not just manufacturing establishments. Without their participation, I don't think we would gain from what we call what you call demographic dividend of India, because there are a lot of young people who need to be trained. Not only that, even the ones that are having higher education today, if you see from our point of view, are not normally employable. So we need to really sort of relook at the way we have been teaching, and the NEP is a good step forward right at the base, because most of our pedagogy and teaching is like learning by rote, and we're not creating any skills in people. And so when they come out to the work field, there seems to be a cultural shock as to what is expected of them, and there's a difference in wide gap in the expectation of what the corporate world or the commercial world feels and what the people are capable of. So a robust skilling ecosystem is very, very vital, with adequate skill sets. And mind you, sir, the skills that are required are some traditional skills which will continue, but with the world moving at a phenomenal pace, especially COVID and post-COVID, there are some new skills that will be required, which today perhaps don't even exist. So our entire system has to cater to both these, perhaps in the right way. And if you are to make India the skill capital, if you skill everybody in all the people who are coming into the working age, if we skill them, India will be the skill capital. But I would go further and say that maybe we should even attract people from outside the other parts of the world, where we can skill people here, which means that we need to really collaborate. And we have started once we spoke about Japan and UAE, and I know that we're doing something in the hotel industry with Switzerland. These are very, very vital. One thing you hit upon, which I was wanting to emphasize, we are very good in what we have, perhaps, as the current infrastructure. We are very good in terms of what we have as policies and our intent, but where we have to improve phenomenally is basically implementation. We have an issue with implementation. Whatever we intend to do, we are not translating that on the ground for many reasons, some of them good, some of them which are quite controllable. So if I look at some of the issues that are facing today, and I'm going down to apprenticeships, it's easy for the large companies, and I find, at least in the South, most of the apprentices are taken by the large PSUs. There's a certain quota of apprentices, and there is a certain dichotomy between what the state is handling and what the center is handling, and sometimes these don't have a common thread. So somewhere we need to bring a common thread between these and not have this confusion of what is state, what is center, so that there is something that we all agree upon. The other issue with large companies is private companies is that they don't need to go into the apprenticeship act and take people. They actually have other areas where they like the learn value earn scheme, etc., where they're taking in a large number of people, and people are employed there, and they are learning, and they work for about 5 days, and they go to school for for a day or 2 days, and then they get a certificate at the end of it. Now, a major portion where you really require apprentices are the MSMEs. The issue there I find with MSMEs is that they don't have the wherewithal to deal with the regulation, and now you're bringing in the TPA thing, and hopefully that should sort it out. Because, and they also say that the moment they sign up for the apprentices in the state, the labor department is behind them, and they say we can't deal with these regulations. We want something much easier to handle. So this is one of the issues that MSMEs are facing, and also MSMEs are based predominantly in the urban areas, and some of these people with the stipend that they get are not able to sustain themselves in the urban areas. So normally they don't join. They're still staying in their tier 2, tier 3 cities or in their villages. So I think Orissa has a scheme of having a hostel for these people for skilling. I'm not sure which other state has, but somewhere we need to look at that, or we need to look at moving the skill centers to where they are and what are the industries around. So it's very important that we match these in the skill gap analysis. We should also see what is the geographical kind of spread that we have. One of the things that we've been talking about is there have been some things called sandwiched courses. Why can't we make this compulsory right across for engineers, for vocational training people, even for those that are in the arts? If you have a 3-year degree course, you make it 4-year, 1 year. After 2 years, you go and take an apprenticeship for a year and you come back and finish your final year. For engineering, we go back to a 5-year course. You do 3 years, you go to 1 year of apprenticeship, and you come back for the final year. What does this do to you? The problem that we face is technically people are getting qualified, but they are very, very poor in communication, very poor in people in dealing with people. Because they don't have that experience, and the only way they can get that experience is to really work in a work situation. So if we do not move people into a work situation, there's always going to be this dichotomy and this gap. So they need to learn what it is to work in an organization, how it is to deal with people, what is time management, etc., and how do you communicate. You may be the best person in the world with the greatest of skills. If you can't communicate with others, you don't get nowhere, and that we have seen everywhere. In fact, a good communicator with poorer skills gets sometimes further than a bad communicator with very good skills. So we need to look at that. So why not look at sandwich courses? The other issue with MSMEs, when I spoke about the stipends not being good enough for these people to sustain themselves about what they are being paid in cities, the other issue is MSMEs not having the wherewithal to pay this or having enough bench strength to train the people. And in MSMEs, I find that they have to be a jack of all trades. They don't have very specific skills. So how do we get people who are able to go through a number of skills and get multi-skilled in an MSME? We need to find a way to do that. And I've been speaking to a number of MSMEs where their situation, this is what we have. We don't have people, they have to hit the road running on the job, and they learn on the job. So this is something that we need to look at as to how we can accommodate this so that we can get more and more people into MSMEs. One thing, if you make it as a part of the course, that means they don't get paid. It's a part of your curriculum because you're paying a fee. So you're learning. So then you have a lot more traction. You can have both these systems running, but you can have a lot more traction in many more people. And I saw this note from the ministry that we should have had 20 lakh, what you call apprentices, and we have only 2.5 lakhs in India. So how do we sort of bridge that gap? So soft skills, sandwich courses, they are very, very vital. There's one more thing that I want to bring in. With the new education policy, in terms of vocational training, and you can go back to university, you can come and you can switch between things. It's very, very, very good if you implement it well, and you should implement it across the country. One law that you have to change is, all of us have gone abroad, you must have gone abroad. You see young people, irrespective of their economic condition, even people who are very well-to-do, the young ones go do a job during their summer vacation or during their winter vacation. They work in shops, they work in offices. We don't allow that because we have something called a Child Labor Act, which intrudes into this. I agree the Child Labor Act is good. You cannot give permanent employment, but for internship and this short-term internship that you spoke of, where even as a kid, you pick up a lot of what you call skills, makes a huge difference. Then we have to change the act. Just for example, I saw a young kid sitting in his father's shop selling electrical goods, and he was a class 8 kid. He knew about every piece of electrical machinery that he was selling, the prices, and he was sitting at the cash till. My class 8 kid at that point of time, many years ago, did not know what commerce was. So we need to sort of get these kids out, and at that for need we need these certain changes. What is happening is very good. I must admit that we are going at a phenomenal pace. We have built the physical infrastructure. Now, do we have the pedagogy to get these people really trained? A few years ago, we tried to change the pedagogy of ITIs. What happened was that we did everything. We said this is so much of e-learning, so much of a practical training, and a finishing school. So we can ask some of the large corporates and small corporates who have capacity and training centers to bring them in as finishing schools. We tried it out in our own company. We brought the corporation ITI people for a few years, and they went through a 10-day finishing thing, which really improved their knowledge and their way of handling. So how do we bring that in? It's very important that we bring that in, so that the physical infrastructure that we have created also gives rise to people who are skilled enough to get jobs, because employability is very, very vital. So that's something that one would have to look at and ensure that more and more companies get on board. So basically, these are some of my things, and what is happening in terms of the proposed amendments are very, very good. Like we have to get down to implementation. It's down below at the working level that we need to instill a slightly different outlook, both at the industry level and at the ITI level, which I dealt with now. There is a certain dichotomy even in the ITIs. We are made as chairman of the ITI coming from the industry, but they get their orders from the government because the money is also coming from the government, and the structure is like very government oriented. And I find that they are very regulated, and some of it is very, very old. I mean, things have moved. So we need to find a way to delink that and see if there is a private industry which is organizing. They are able to bring in courses which are, I see them happening, of course. I'm not saying that it is completely devoid. I find some very good courses coming in. But still, the principle of the ITI or the whoever is this that is running the ITI is still very government oriented, and that kind of structure does not sort of really give free hand to make the changes and to ensure that all skilling is demand driven, and not because we have a few courses, we are skilling them and then trying to get a job for them. So it has to be demand driven. It has to work along, and all the stakeholders, the public, the private industry, the PSUs, and the government, and the various institutions should work together. One last thing is, some of the ITIs may not have the wherewithal in terms of physical infrastructure for certain skills, but I find a lot of engineering colleges do have, and engineering colleges do not have 2 shifts. Why can't we get in touch with the engineering colleges who have these good workshops or the training centers where we can move these people in the same area and use these facilities, where in colleges or sometimes even in companies, to make sure that they actually get practical training, and when they get out with their certificate, they are not to be trained again. They can do their job very, very well. There are good examples, pockets of excellence. We just need to dot them. So thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. A lot of good points. I have a couple of questions which I will pose at the end. And welcome, Mr. Pai. So we have just started just a small presentation from myself, and a presentation by Mr. Rangnath. And we go to the next panelist, Mr. Manish Sabarwal. And I don't have to introduce Mr. Manish Sabarwal. Everyone knows it, and everyone has read his articles on compliances and other things. And he has been doing a lot of phenomenal work in apprenticeship. Welcome. The floor is yours, Mr. Sabarwal.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here. So I just wanted to cover and build on the paper that we have already circulated, which is very good. That I think there's a unique opportunity for India. I did want to step back. There is it's a very important question in life, whether what matters more is skill or luck. And India is very lucky right now. There is a structural window opening up in the world of work, in the world of organizations, and the world of education. In a world where Google knows everything, knowing is useless and learning how to learn and skills become the primary objective. In a world where work is getting divorced from employment contracts or is also sort of unpacking from offices, and in a world where organizations' employment is no longer a lifetime contract but a taxi cab relationship, I think that is very important for us to consider this new world of work, organizations, and education as a gift of India at this stage of our development. I think the China fatigue is important. You know, India's rival was never Pakistan. Their GDP is less than Maharashtra. But the China fatigue, where supply chains are shifting from just in time to just in case, offers really important opportunities for us. So I guess if the global window is favoring us and India is lucky over the next 25 years as supply chains get reconfigured, as we build on our strength in IT, India has the same switching costs in IT that China has in manufacturing, then how do we use these skills? So I'll just step back and reflect on three lessons at least. I have been working in this area for 20 years, on three lessons that I wish I had known when we started work 20 years ago. One is that there is a financing solution required. I think we paid a lot of attention to what will be the curriculum, who will deliver, but who pays was a question that we missed. That there is a bit of a market failure in who pays. Everybody's trying to topi now the other person. You know, employers are not willing to pay for training or candidates. They're willing to pay for a trained candidates. Candidates are not willing to pay for skills. They're willing to pay for a job. Banks or microfinance aren't willing to lend to a candidate, and training companies aren't able. So I think learning while earning is an important principle that we will have to put at the forefront of the new architecture that you are planning. I think learning by doing is, again, as you have identified, but that makes skilling more demand driven. And the other one would be signaling value of education. And this is not unique to India. I know a lot of people think that the degree obsession is uniquely Indian, but Michael Spence got his Nobel Prize for his work on the signaling value of higher education. And Wharton, IIM, IITs are good places to be at, but they are better places to be from. So the fundamental sort of recognition that we are in a world where signaling value matters, but may not be as valuable as it used to be. But let's not argue with it. So we need a financing solution, we need a signaling value solution, and we need a learning by doing solution, which is involving employability to not be supply driven. So I'd just like to sort of give three thoughts here. One is, I think qualification modularity will be very key to the new architecture. There cannot be a partition between a 3-month certificate, a 1-year diploma, a 2-year advanced diploma, and a 3-year degree. Now, whether the new unified skill regulator will provide that, whether the legitimacy of skill universities will provide that, because right now we have agricultural universities which are recognized by UGC, but skill universities are not recognized by us. So I think qualification modularity in whichever way can be accomplished. I know this is cross ministry, and MHRD, which is the organizer of the whole day, it has to also pitch in. But I think it's time for MSDE also to think about this connectivity as core to the expansion of the skill system, because anyway, globally, the partition between skills and education is becoming less relevant in the eyes of employers, in the eyes of students, and in the eyes of parents. So it is still relevant in the eyes of regulators, but the world has made it less relevant, and it might be time for policy to catch up with that. So some kind of qualification modularity legitimized by skill universities or a national skill regulator would be useful. The suggestion would be equivalence between all 4 classrooms. Today, there are 4 ways that children can learn. They can learn on the job, they can learn online, they can learn on site, and they can learn on campus. All these 4 classrooms have very different levels of cost. All of these 4 classrooms have very different levels of efficacy for different subjects. So I think that, for example, only 7 out of the 1,000 universities in India are today licensed to do online delivery, while 200 foreign universities have enrolled students in India, because we can't stop foreign universities. So I would suggest that there is one legitimacy of the on-job classroom, which a number of amendments are being planned with the ministry, which are wonderful. I think on-site delivery is also being legitimized by some of the changes proposed by MHRD. But I continue to say that only licensing 7 out of 1,000 universities for online puts India is handicapped. I know there is a suggestion to open it up, but I would say that there's a simple suggestion. Any university which is accredited should be able to launch online classrooms. There is no reason for a second or a third or a fourth regulation and legislation for online. So basically equalizing all 4 classrooms, because on-campus classrooms can be 18,000 rupees an hour, like I paid it. On-site classrooms can be 8,000 rupees an hour. On-the-job classrooms are about 200 rupees an hour, but online classrooms can be done at 50 rupees an hour. So you may argue with the efficacy, but anything that has a 30, 40 times difference in cost will make it more inclusive in a country like India. And the third would be the institutional diversity, which is employers are today at the heart of every design of the apprenticeship program. And when the act was written in 1961, I think that was appropriate. But today, given the biodiversity that I talked about, the structural changes in the world of work, in the world of education, and the world of organizations, it might be useful to legitimize universities and other sort of institutional forms who could provide either the qualification modularity or the 4 different classrooms, which would enable us to scale. I mean, Germany has 2.7% equivalent of its labor force in apprentices. That would mean if India even was to match that, it would be 15 million apprentices. So I think that there is no question that if you offer qualification modularity, if you legitimize the 4 classrooms as equal, and if you offer institutional diversity, combined with the ease of doing business, ease of apprenticeship provisions that you propose to do, I think we could easily get to the apprenticeship targets, and that they would be, and at a certain level, even India may be ahead of the curve, because degree apprenticeships are being recognized as the future of education, because they solve learning while learning, they solve learning by doing. And to me, I think so. Nelson Mandela had once said that, our choices should reflect our hopes rather than our fears. And I think if you look back at the Apprenticeship Act, there were a lot of fears, some of which are still legitimate. Will employers exploit students and stuff like that? But I think at the cost of sort of catching those few employers who would misuse the apprenticeship forum, we have not allowed apprenticeships to become a legitimate form of classrooms. And I think an apprenticeship is not a job, it is not labor, it is a classroom. And I think the proposals and the amendments proposed are wonderful. And I think we will have to make sort of, the only way India will become stronger in my mind is raise education, raise skills, as the PM pointed out. And one of my favorite quotes as a child was Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, Samashobhati us bhujang ko jiske paas garal ho, right? Only people who are strong can be benevolent, can be generous. And I think that the skill system as currently structured has evolved a lot over the last 10 years. But now would be a wonderful time, given the global opportunity that India has, to really make apprenticeships much easier, to create degree modularity and equalize the 4 classrooms. So I'll stop here, sir.
Thank you. Brilliant as usual. It's always a pleasure listening to you, Mr. Sabharwal.
Thank you, sir.
I also, your talk was prompting me to ask questions immediately, but I'll note it down. I won't stop the flow decided earlier. Next we come to Dr. Rodney Revere, Program Head of GIZ IGVET. Dr. Rodney, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to enter this interesting discussion. My particular perspective, of course, as an expatriate, as a German expert who is here working with the German Development Cooperation, the GIZ. So my perspective is quite a bit different. I think I'll talk a little bit about the apprenticeships, particularly from the German perspective, perhaps with the idea of what can India learn from Germany? Germany has a very, very long tradition of formalized apprenticeships, over 100 years. In India, the tradition is much more of an informal setting. And since the last 50 years, since the Apprenticeship Act in India has been formalizing it. And as with any process and any system like this, it's an evolutionary process. And And we see that, of course, by these latest proposals to amend the Apprenticeship Act. I think one of the biggest differences between India and Germany regarding the apprenticeship approach is similar to what Dr. Ranganath said, the sandwich courses, that in
I think we seem to have lost him.
We have lost him.
I think we have lost him.
Yeah.
So what? Wow, instead of wasting time, we'll take him again when he joins.
Yeah.
Mr. Pai, your personality is so forceful, so we can't make you wait. Thank you for being able to join. And I don't have to introduce Mr. Pai because Dr. Pai rather. Sorry for saying Mr. is Dr. Pai. The protocol we have said that the panelists will speak for around 10 minutes. And then Dr. Rodney, I think we have started with Mr. Pai. I think we'll take you back again since when Mr. Pai gets, Dr. Pai gets. Yeah, Dr. Pai, please.
Folks, thank you very much. I want to talk on making India the skill capital of the world and give you an example of the IT industry. Let me give you some data. I think it's important to understand what happened, and then we can see whether the model works. The IT software industry this year will have an export of nearly $160 billion from India. 60% of global outsourcing comes here, employs 4.5 million people. And the IT of the top 10 software service companies by market value globally, 5 are Indian. Of the top 5, 3 are Indian. The most valuable software service company by market value is Indian, that is TCS. Of the 2.8 million people in the top 10, 2 million are Indians. And the United States has 6 million people in software. 1 million are Indians working there. Out of 4.5 million here, 2 million work for American companies. Out of 8 million working for American companies, 3 million are Indians. And what happened to make this happen? Because I remember when I joined Infosys in 1994, India's total exports must have been about maybe $100 million, right? And I remember there was this hue and cry about India lacking talent. McKinsey made a study and said by 2010 we'll be short of 500,000 people. I remember a MHRD meeting in 2007-8 where the secretary told us that there's a problem. We have a lot of engineers, they're not trained, they can't get jobs, so we should do something. I said, sure. Then he said, okay, we'll pick up 100 of them and then we'll train them in an IIT in 6 months' time. And we will make sure they get jobs. I told him we are hiring 500 people a day. What are you going to do with this 100? So the scale is something that has to happen. Why did it happen? All these companies had a business model which is global, export-led. They set up training departments and they train people. Infosys built a global university in Mysore at a cost of 2,000 crores, where it is the largest corporate university in the world. And we had 600 computer science professors or professionals at that point of time, 600 more than any university in the world. We trained 35,000 people a year at the peak, and we train more people for global software than any country in the world, barring the United States and China. So today, we must see the areas in the world which are short of people. Which are the big areas?
Hello?
Now, yes. Now, the areas in the world are in the health area. Why can't India license companies? Why can't India license companies? Why can't India license some companies to make sure that they tackle the health area, give them training grants, to export doctors around the world? Yes, doctors have a problem.
I'm in right now. Do I need to leave and come back in or what?
Just a minute, I'll request whoever's mic is on to please.
Yeah, I rejoined 30 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago. Okay,
yeah,
but thanks for calling. Okay.
Please mute your mic. Thank you. Please mute your mic.
Yeah. So, you know, we need professional companies.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was on.
We need professional companies who can be, let us say, tied up with the skill department, tied up in the sense, not registration, not licensing, nothing like that. As work as partners, will focus on doctors, and they can get grants from the skill ministry so that they can do the certification of doctors in the local environment. For example, I'm told by Dr. Devi Shetty that Cuba has sent out 35,000 doctors to other countries. Now, India will produce 90,000 doctors a year for the next year. And maybe after that, we'll produce 125,000 doctors because expansion is happening. What about nurses? Now, the Philippines has possibly 2 million people working as nurses outside. So they have tied up with, many countries, and those countries want nurses. They have certain certification programs. Those programs are given here, and they can be trained. Japan, for instance, has a shortage of nurses. We can join with Japan to train nurses. But what we need as execution is companies like a Team Lease or possibly like a Quest, who can work with the ministry to make sure that the execution happens in the private sector. There is support from the government in the form of training grants. While in software, we could invest all the money. For example, we used to spend 5 lakhs per person to train a person for 6 months, 5 lakh rupees. Now, obviously, people outside cannot afford that. So there need to be a grant system whereby you work with partners like Quest, like hospitals, Manipal Hospital, Narayan Rudalaya, etc., who can do that because they have a base and they can be your partners. You give them grants to train people, they will tie up, and we can start exporting people outside because India is surplus in human capital. We produce more than 250,000 nurses a year. They have to undergo certification. They can work in hospitals for 2-3 years, and then they can go outside and they can work. Narayan Rudala is already doing that big way. Why can't they partner with the skill ministry? That is the next one. And the third one, which is very important, of course, which we are doing, is in the construction industry. The fourth one, which we are doing, is the medical technologies industry. And we are also doing in the areas of personal care. We're also doing in the areas of, let us say, chartered accountants. Chartered accountants can be the next big flow outside to India, because chartered accountants get about 40,000 chartered accountants a year. There are more than 350,000 chartered accountants. Why can't we make them a global profession? Now, we have the professions which are run by people independent, like the Institute of Chartered Accountants, cost accountants, management accountants. Why can't they work with the skill ministry to do this? So all I'm saying is, we need a particular strategy where we work with partners who can execute, with people like the ministry giving them grants and easing the way out. We need our missions outside India to talk to governments to ease the way out. We pick and choose, and we work with other countries. Today, doctors are required in many countries because of the health, COVID, and everything else. The world is short, especially the emerging markets in healthcare. Nurses are required in the older, in the richer countries because they're short of people. Not many people want to become a nurse. IT is taken care of. Accountants are required in large number all over the place. And like that, if we identify the top 10 professions, we can tackle this in a very significant way. So to make India the skill capital, which is already is in many areas, we need a larger vision, partnership with many executive agents, and then grants to be given, training grants to be given by government, and use of a diplomatic force to just interact, making sure that global certification can be done for people, which is expensive. If you're able to break this logjam, I think we can do it in a very significant way. I don't want to talk about people at the bottom of the pyramid, because that is what we've been doing for a long period of time. Even for them, if your certification will work, we have done it with the UAE, we've done it with many other countries. I think we've done part of it in Japan, but we can expand that. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Pai, for giving a perspective on not restricting ourselves to the skill ministry bottom of the pyramid skilling, which we do, and think of professions of a higher order professions and trying to have an export on that. So that opens our eyes that we should limit ourselves by our ministry and partner with health ministry, corporate affairs ministry. So professions we associate with those ministries also, we should partner and try to create an ecosystem for having this center. Thanks a lot, sir. I think, sorry, Dr. Revere, we have to switch to Mr. Pai, Dr. Pai, because of we didn't want to waste time while you get reconnected. Dr. Revere, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm sorry about getting the phone call. I thought my microphone was muted, and that's I guess that's a fairly common phenomena that we have been dealing with this last year. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's made that little faux pas. Again, my apologies. In fact, it was MSDE that was calling me to make sure that I was able to get on to the meeting. So it was a business call in that regard. I believe that I was talking a little bit about Germany and how the German apprenticeship system differs from the Indian system, and perhaps then we can take some of these differences and analyze them and to see how they might be adaptable to the Indian context to help improve quality. Because I think at the end of the day, quality is the most important factor that we're talking about, and apprenticeships are a way of improving the quality of the ITIs. My project is working with a lot of the business membership organizations across India, and one of the complaints and one of the things that we have been hearing is there's a certain degree of skepticism in private sector about the quality of the ITI graduates, and that makes them somewhat reluctant to open their doors for even apprenticeships. So there's a bit of a mindset, and we have to work a bit on the mindset of some of the private sector, or a lot of the private sector, to get them more actively involved and interested in working to improve quality for their own benefit. But as I was saying, one of the key differences between the German system and the Indian system is that all apprenticeships are not additional. They are all totally integrated into the curriculum. In fact, they have specific learning outcomes which the companies need to impart as part of it, as part of the training. So it's not icing on the cake, it is the substance of the cake, if I can use that analogy. Another big difference, and this is something that India seems to be going towards with these reforms that I was reading about, or the proposed reforms, is the certification process. In Germany, it's the private sector that issues the certification and does the testing of the graduates from the technical schools. It's the chambers of commerce, the chambers of industry, the guilds. So their active engagement and their actually leadership in this entire ecosphere helps guarantee the relevance of the skills that are training and the quality of the skills, because ultimately it's the private sector that are the customers of the VET skilling system. And so they're the ones that have the biggest interest and the biggest say-so in how the end products, how the graduates are, what their skills are. So I like very much Dr. Agnath's suggestion about the sandwich courses, and I think also that the TPAs are a very good step to help get more SMEs, MSMEs involved in it, and in a way that is less bureaucratic, and it allows them to actively participate because of the huge number across industry of the MSMEs, excluding them or basically facilitating their active engagement in the ecosphere and the apprenticeship ecosphere and the entire training ecosphere is definitely a step in the right direction. In fact, this will also blend in pretty well. It could blend in pretty well with the idea of having the skilling, because MSMEs can be quite small and they may only be able to provide a partial experience for the apprenticeships, and so they can only learn part of the skill set that they need to learn, that perhaps different MSMEs through a TPA arrangement, the skilling could be targeted, and for example, and certain sets of skills are learned in one company and a different set of skills are learned in a different company in the course of an apprenticeship, in the course of a training program. So I think these are some interesting ideas, something that we could discuss, of course. And let me just make a couple of comments real quickly about the international labor aspect and the global skilling. Now, this is not a part of my program that I'm running here, but I do know that there are some programs in Germany for recruiting international skilled labor, although it's, to my knowledge, it has been mostly focused on nursing, because Germany does have a shortage. But I think as everyone knows, Germany and India are on different demographic tracks. Germany is facing a labor shortage, and India has a labor surplus. So that could, in fact, be very positive on both sides, provided certain things are met. And here we come again to the issue of quality. You know, Germany has very high standards for its education system, particularly its VET system. And German employers also have very high expectations from their workers. So these quality issues need to be addressed before, you know, in order to facilitate the migration or the temporary employment of Indian workers in Germany. And so anyway, that's the sum that I have to say. I don't know if I made my whole 10 minutes, but that maybe leaves more time for discussion. Thank you very much for the time and for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Adne. I think we touched both the issues. And now, the advantage, Mr. Rajkumar, the advantage of being last is that
Yeah.
you know that what has been spoken and what you can focus on.
Yeah.
Disadvantages that you might have wanted would have already been spoken of, but anyway, I think
Yeah.
we'd like to benefit from hearing new things from you. Thank you. Please,
Yeah.
Mr. Ash. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I think it's very nice to discuss on the topic of India's skill capital of the world. I would like to keep my focus on the international mobility of skilled manpower. So I'll try to keep my focus more on skilled manpower. And I think I may have to stress a little bit more on Japan because we have some exposure and experience in Japan. But still, I will try to focus on the multi-culture and multi-skills that may be required when we wanted to look at mobilizing skilled manpower for the international market. First of all, as even Mr. Rodney mentioned, I think India has a surplus of manpower, and when it comes to the depict, I think the demand, Japan is the one which has the highest demand, followed by other countries, including Germany, France, Italy, Poland. If you see the list of the countries where the resources are required, actually it's a little bit new to India because all these years we were more on the UAE and maybe a little bit of Asia like Singapore. But I think now the list is all a very new sort of countries where people were not aware about countries like Japan or Poland or even Germany for that matter. I think we are talking about skills now. So I feel that yes, we have enough of technical skills. We have various ITIs and even diplomas, and of course, I'm talking about the blue collar. Even when it comes to the highly skilled people, we have various universities and colleges. But however, when it comes to the case of blue collar or especially when it comes about mobilizing resources for these things, I think we need to cover this multicultural part and the multi-language part, especially Japan and even Germany, to my knowledge. I think these two countries we are also focusing now because, as Dr. Rodney mentioned, I think quality. When we wanted to focus ourselves as the India skill capital of the world, I think irrespective of whether we are talking skilled or semi-skilled or gray, blue collar or gray collar, I think we still need to keep on quality. And I think Japan and Germany, I think these two can be a sort of benchmark for us to show that we can be the skill capital of the world by supplying to these two countries. Of course, it includes other countries also. I'm not trying to say that other countries are not looking at quality, but these two countries are a little bit challenge for us to make sure that we can show the Indian quality and capability. Now, when it comes to multi-language, I think it's really a very strong point that we possess. Most of we can speak multi-languages, and I think learning a new language, whether it is German or whether it is Japanese, I think it is only the matter of whether the manpower is given that sort of training. I think we have the ability and capability to learn a new language. I think when compared to any other country, I think India has the capability of acquiring a new language. Japanese, for example, I know many of them feel it's a difficult language, but what we have seen is we learn the language almost, there is a level called N3, which is required for caretakers or nurses to, special caretakers to work in Japan. And that skill can be acquired by in around 6 months, whereas other countries takes almost an year and a half. I think this is because of our basic capability of acquiring a new language, and there's a lot of similarities. And I think this is the same thing when compared to other languages, including Germany and France. So I think these 2 points, I think if we can emphasize on the multi-language and multicultural, I think we can provide quality resources to various of these countries where the high demand is there. And when it comes to as even Dr. Mohandas mentioned, yes, there is a lot of skill, especially on the nurses. There's a lot of need in various countries, including Japan. But the point goes down there that the language is a must, because without the language, I think they trying to perform in these sort of countries is getting will be a challenge. And when it comes to nurses, yes, they have the capability and they can come and work to Japan or even Germany, but they need to acquire the language, and that needs some sort of time. And of course, there is a financial part that is required. So there should be some sort of support, maybe from the government, to promote or to make sure, or to support these resources to get these new skills which they are not used to it. At least in the initial stage, I think this is required. And once people are aware that it is not very difficult to acquire these sort of skills, I think we create a trend, and then I think automatically the flow happens. And of course, when it comes to countries like Germany and even Japan, I think the most important thing is trying to create and introduce and promote these resources to Japan. Yes, as again, Mr. Dr. Mohandas Pai mentioned, even for IT, it took a long time to promote to Japan the IT skills, talent that we had when compared to other countries. It took a little bit of time, almost 5 to 10 years of time gap to enter into Japan. But now Japan has accepted Indian IT, and I think this is the same for nurses and other sort of blue collar workers. So I think promotion and the relation with these sort of employers in Japan is a must. And I think we may have to create a set of leaders to supply to these countries, and including the support of the government, who has a lot of experience in handling these sort of relations with the Japanese government and maybe the Japanese employers and the supervising organizations. I think these are the major things that I wanted to say. And I think a little bit of emphasis on TATP and SSW. I think, yes, TATP is an intern training program, and it is a 28-year-old program. But India signed it only 2 years back, and we have a reason. We have started it just 2 years back, and I think it's a long way. But we will be able to meet the expectation of Indian Japanese employers. So I think TATP is one thing that we started, and now SSW has come, and SSW is more a job sort of role that is that they can come and work in Japan. And both of them, it is, I think, including SSW, it covers various micro industries, including fishery, aquaculture. So there is a lot of demand required in various specific fields, which even we were not aware or we did not expect. So I think all this requires additional skills. And there are some industries where there is a, for example, what I mentioned about fisheries or even agriculture, not even 2% of the demand is being supplied, not only by India, but overall. For SSW, there was an expectation of almost 350,000 people by 2024. But as of today, only 2% has been supplied. So I think there's a large gap, and we have a lot of opportunity. And I think we can really become India's skill capital with Japan and Germany and a couple of other countries as an example. So I think I will just end up my meeting, my speech here, because I think it's almost 10 minutes now. And if there's anything I can answer during the Q&A session. Thank you for giving an opportunity.
वो हैंड कैसे दिख रहा है उसका हैंड जो उठाने वाला दिखना है कौन कौन there are some people who are on an interactive mode. If they want to speak, they can raise their hand on the software, or else they can switch on the mic and speak, as long as there's no cacophony. Only first question I wanted to just to start the Mr. Sabarwal. See, apprenticeship, one thing you hinted that the gig economy is going to become very important. With the gig economy, how will the apprenticeship link into the gig economy, where each taxi fellow, the entrepreneur himself. How it will link into that kind of thing.
I mean, I think India has always had the world's biggest gig economy. 50% of our labor force is self-employed, but that is self-exploitation. I think the difference between informal or unproductive self-employment and the gig economy is that people in the gig economy are more productive because of three things. They have access to technology, which gives them demand. They have access to skill development, which is built into the training process. And of course, so their capacity utilization is higher, their tools are better, and their skills are higher because of the apprenticeship effect of the gig economy. I mean, the challenge for even say food service delivery people is the turnover, because everybody views their 3 month, 6 month, 9 month gig as an apprenticeship in a certain level. So I think we could link the gig economy to the apprenticeship regime through the legitimizing the qualification corridor, legitimizing the 4 classrooms, and legitimizing institutional diversity. Those are the three sort of basic suggestions that I made in original. So if we are allowed to give them credit for some of their portions in the gig economy, subject to obviously verification of records of their work, if we are allowed to recognize that on the job and on site learning is equal to on classroom learning, and if we recognize the role of universities and other organized institutions in creating this connectivity. So I actually think that the gig economy is a powerful a tool for expanding apprenticeships, but we will obviously have to make it more formal than informal, as the gentleman from Germany called. But I think there would be institutional mechanisms, and I'd be happy to send you a note on making this possible.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone? Please, you can switch
Yeah,
on your
can I make
microphone.
a statement?
Yeah. Dr. Pai, Dr. Pai,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mr. Secretary, I would suggest that Skill Ministry start a program to say we want to have 100,000 highly skilled Indians go overseas in the next 1 year and create an export market for us. Now you can identify in which area this has to be. Healthcare can be 25, 30%. Then you can have in construction and other areas. Then you tie up with maybe 20 companies. 20 companies as partners. For example, Manish's company, Team Leads, companies like Quest, who have very, very large number of people. Between both of them, they probably have 600,000 people. They hire 150,000 people. Talk to them, ask them what they need in various highly skilled people. Now, out of 600,000 people, maybe 200,000 will be extremely skilled, very highly skilled in various areas, and they can work in many countries. Now, they may require some funding for language, they may require some funding for certification, etc. And these companies can become your partners to do all that, because government cannot do it. Now, the strategy of the skill ministry has been to have a lot of trainers who are paid a lot of money, small amounts of money, to create skilled people for India. What about creating this top of the pyramid, highly skilled people for the export market? So I think in the next 1 decade, through this program, if you're able to send out 1.5 million, 2 million people, that will be unbelievable. Because what will happen, that will pull the entire pyramid up in skills. Why? People will want to get highly skilled. People will want to get global certification. People will have an aspiration to go outside. But you need implementing agencies and companies. Companies like Manish's company, like Quest, like Narayan Rudalaya, Manipal Hospital, who are experts, who handle a lot of people, they know what to do. They can get the certification for the people. You won't be able to do it. Then link them with the missions so that we have this national program for skill, because you have to pull up the pyramid. I think it's something that maybe you can think as an output from this meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions?
Yes, can I come in, please?
Yeah, Mr. Kak, please.
Yeah. I wanted to say three things. Number one, that in order to export global skill manpower, you will have to have an enormous change in the attitude, the work ethics. And the most important thing is the commitment of the person to be useful in an organization. This is one. This is the cultural shift that you must focus on. While the core skills are important, I think the ability to learn on the job, the ability to adjust to the requirements of the cultural and the environment, they are equally important if you want to succeed as a person who's contributing to an organization. The second thing I wanted to say is that you cannot train people for today's technology. You have to start training people for tomorrow's technology. You have to start training people for 3D printing. You have to start treating principles for IoT and similar other particular higher end jobs. And because you have enormous amount of ITS enabled people, they can be trained in this particular thing, and that can be in manpower that we can send it to other particular things because it will be required, because it will be in demand. The third thing that I wanted to say is that we need to create a structure where the private sector has a very important role to play, both nationally and internationally, in order to bring the bridges that, see, the point is that if you want, I agree with Dr. Mohandas Pai, I agree with Rajkumarji, I agree with Mr. Sabrawal, that we need to create an ecosystem that has a certain business model, that has a certain business support, and that has a certain goal. So targeted, well-organized business focus with these particular three things would make India definitely a global thing, and we must have a roadmap for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kak. I think very good points. We have recorded that for that. Anyone else, or can I ask the next question?
Can I talk?
Yeah, please go ahead. Please, Mr. Mehta.
Yes, I am currently chairing FICCI's chemical committee, and we have recently completed a project in a record time in terms of construction. One field I have is that while we concentrate on skilling people, the best thing would be to really see how do we support people, construction contractors who are actually going around getting businesses and therefore needing skilled people. They themselves will then start acting in the interest of business to see how they can get better skilled people, because that's the way they can get more contracts. So whether it is construction contracts or whatever, how do we really look at these companies who are going abroad, getting more businesses, and see what best way we can really do to support them? Thank you.
Hello.
So thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else? Or okay, my one question I would like to ask either
What is wrong with you?
I'll come to you. Just one question.
What is wrong with you? I'm going to report you to district police that you are.
Mr. Kak,
can you mute your mic, Mr. Kak?
Can you mute your mic? Okay, Mr. Rangnath or Mr. Manish.
Yeah.
The elephant in the room in apprenticeship is the stipend.
Yes.
No one, one of the reasons establishments don't come forward because they don't see value in paying stipend to people and training them. That culture is not there. So one idea which came that suppose apprenticeship as part of the education is made stipend free, zero stipend. What is the views on that? Zero. If it is part of the educational system, since you go for education, you give a fees. Apprenticeship is part of that. So whether it can be a zero stipend kind of thing where you get a degree and an apprenticeship, but you don't get a stipend for that. Whether that needs to be included in the in our Act amendment also. Mr. Rangnath, perhaps you can comment. Mr. Sabrawal also, if you
Yeah, which is what I advocated when I spoke, that sandwich courses should be a part of our curriculum, so that you remove this apprenticeship fee and it becomes a part of this thing. That's the only way it will work, because then
That's the only way it will work. Okay.
Yeah, especially if you want to go to MSMEs, because they can't afford, and then this way you will have a much more what you call level playing field with all the industries opting for them.
My sense is, I think we have now traditionally sold, unfortunately, apprenticeships as a CSR or a burden upon companies. I think with now at least our 5 years of experience, we can justify a return on investment to most CFOs. which is higher than the hurdle rate they use for capital expenditure. Most, say the top 500 companies in India would use 12% or 10% as a return on investment. We have proven to many employers that three things. One is lower turnover among your management, among your apprentices, higher productivity among your apprentices, and faster time to hire. So if you add up these three, you can actually justify a return on investment on the apprenticeship stipend that you pay. But I do agree with Mr. Raghunath that and you that if there is some flexibility given, I actually think that most employers will recognize that they need a mix of different concentric circles for how they think about their apprenticeship strategy. Some will say that, okay, yes, if you are working and while you are being educated full time, if you're only doing it for 1 or 2 days, we don't get our ROI. Some people will choose instead of a sandwich, a reverse sandwich, where they'll be working for 5 days and studying for 1 day. Some will study for 1 day. So I would just say I think there is merit in considering the proposal, but it is starting to be accepted among large companies that you can get a return on your apprenticeship stipend, but recognizing that people who are majority in education and just doing part-time apprentices, it becomes hard for employers to get an ROI, and this proposal would really expand the numbers for sure.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Manish,
Mr. Raphael had raised the hand. Mr. Raphael, James Raphael.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, sir. I'd like to just make 2 points. One is more on the apprenticeship part, and the other is on the international mobility. So, starting off first from the apprenticeship part. In fact, since Dr. Rodney is also there on this session, in fact, I would ascribe the success of the German model in making apprenticeship a way of life is to one attribute. One is the industry driving it. However, one very critical underpinning link exists over there, which is non-existent in our environment, and it was highlighted also through the other experts or the panelists actually who mentioned about not being adopted in the MSME segment, which is so critical, especially in so many sectors wherein we have a larger portion of traditional players than the modern players. This link is actually nothing but the local administration or the municipal who actually gets approached by any person, any individual establishment, while he or she wants to set up their business. And in that, the skill gap and the demand gap actually gets built grounds up. And this membership, when they take it, so it's like the Bombay Shops and Establishment certificate that anyone will take to start up a shop in Mumbai. And likewise, we have different municipal corporations across the nation. So when they take their license to operate on business, they also register with the respective and relevant chambers in the German environment. And that membership could be non-monetary. However, it articulates very specifically what is the kind. Is it going to be single run, single operated? Am I going to have 2 people, 5 employees? And by virtue of having 5 employees, am I permissible to opt for an apprentice? So this data gets populated actually grounds up, and this becomes a very intuitive platform for people even in rural areas wherein apprenticeship can be enabled. They need not migrate to an urban area on a measly stipend. That can actually be done over there. They can get their feet wet there and get into regular employment and move into metros and mini metros. So this is one part which I wanted to speak about where apprenticeship is concerned. And while we are talking about one thing in terms of making India the skill capital of the world, fantastic. It definitely can be done. And especially when we look at the service sector, which if you go to see in the past 3-4 years, has been actually triggering a lot of employment globally. Language, extremely important, definitely. In fact, if I know Hindi and English, I'm good for literally every part of India. Likewise, which are the most frequently used languages in the nations wherein you have an aging population? Having said that, it's not only this language. There is one language which is universal across the globe, and there is a big segment of population. In fact, in India, we've got the specially abled segment, which is, as per statistics of the census that was done in 2011, it stands at approximately 27 million. 27 million is equivalent to almost larger than one of the top 15 ranking nations by nominal GDP, that is Australia, wherein their population is just 25 million. So can we afford to neglect that kind of population within India? And at the same time, sending people beyond India, uh, they need to be sensitive about this segment, because those nations, in fact, all the names that were taken during this discussion also have very evolved and matured standards of diversity and inclusion. And hence that sensitivity has to be there. How about getting this adopted in the nascent stages of education itself, which could be before entry into higher secondary, because these are going to be the leaders of the future in India and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the new angle on this thing. Mr. Pai wanted to make a remark. Yeah, Mr. Pai, before I go to next one. I think Mr. Pai, you are mute. You are still mute.
Sorry. You're talking about apprenticeship in manufacturing, etc. What about in services? You know, I'm not against manufacturing. We need manufacturing. Why can't we have an apprenticeship program in services? I'll give you an instance. The Institute of Chartered Accountants has 600,000 people who are apprentices, 6 lakhs. They have 6 lakhs. They get maybe 1 lakh every year. There are professional bodies. So why can't retail organizations have apprentices? Why can't airline companies have apprentices? Why don't you enroll all of them in the service industry, which are very large employers, to be apprentices, and support them through a formal program? Because if only manufacturing will get smaller numbers, you must look at services also. You see, the apprentice program started in a manufacturing-led economy. That is very good. That is required. But manufacturing is getting highly automated now. The need for people is coming down. The need for people in the services is going up substantially. And if you look at Manish's company, and I studied that maybe 70-80% Manish is all in services, Manish, if I'm right. Yeah, why not an apprenticeship program there where you can incentivize them? Because why are you ignoring that part? Large numbers are getting done. Put them into your program, and you can show India has already got maybe 10 lakh, 15 lakh apprentices already, and the system is generating.
So we'll be happy to know, Mr. Pai, that the last amendments allowed this services sector also to be included in the apprentices, and now a lot of services apprentices are being kept. But now we have, I think, in my initial my presentation, we plan to expand it further to include areas like education. I think even Manipal University maybe have to keep this thing, training, etc. That also apprentices, and even government departments, they also should be keeping apprentices. All these thoughts are there as part of the process. So that has been done, and we are planning to expand it further to make it, and also enable the establishment itself to design the program, give the certificate. Unless they want funding from us, then they have to go through a standard program kind of thing. Otherwise, they can design and do it themselves. That is the thought in the mind. I think Mr.
Manish?
Roy wanted to say something. Yeah. Surya
Yes,
Roy
sir.
wanted to.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. We've heard the thinkers and the luminaries of the world who are talking about apprenticeship and skill development. I would like to give the perspective of an implementer. I've been implementing the apprenticeship program in India, so there'll be a little difference in perspective. So, as far as I have a few things to say, one is the Apprenticeship Act changes which are being now considered are bang on. Some of them are fantastic, like the universities playing a very integral role for degree apprenticeship. The TPA machinery coming in a bigger way to ensure rollout of apprenticeship in MSMEs, part-time apprenticeships being considered. There are some things which are missing, which I think one should locate. And while there is multiple location for supply and demand as far as apprenticeship training is concerned, what is not coming out is possibly the role of big industry to push apprenticeship to franchisees and ancillaries. I think they have a very important role to play. And if that can be integrated in that approach to roll out apprenticeship in a bigger way, it will be good. And the other thing which was pointed out by some speakers was hostel facilities for apprentices, if that can be integrated into the NAPS program. But putting things in perspective, one way of looking at it is today we have 4 lakh apprentices, we could have 150 million apprentices, possibly. But at the same time, apprenticeship is actually beginning to happen. In 2-3 years, from 2 lakh apprentices, we have now reached about 4 or 5 lakh apprentices. And from PSUs, the apprenticeship world has moved to non-PSUs, the service sector has taken to apprenticeship in a big way. The discretion window provided by the amendments in the Act as far as optional trades is concerned has gone up as much as 7 times in the last 3 years. This is to be taken note of. So from zero, it became 20,000 to 100 lakhs, and now it's going, despite COVID, it is on the growth path in the current financial year. So what I'm trying to say is that industry is beginning to see the win-win in the program, the way it is positioned today, and we should not lose track of that. The NEP and the degree apprenticeship program is a huge opportunity which has come before us in addition to the amendments which have come into the Act. And this has happened despite negligible awareness program, negligible capacity building programs for state functionaries, which the ministry needs to focus on. So there is a win-win which is being built up while challenges are there, and therefore amendments in the Act is a very, very good thing. But it is not about, the Act is not a showstopper. The Act as it is a fantastic Act. It is an industry-friendly Act. It needs to be taken to the industry, taken to the state governments in a much more aggressive manner. But having changes, making changes in the Act, of course, is a fantastic thing. Now, the essence of ease of doing business, which is the macro level theme of this day-long seminar. I mean, the entire thing, the Act is actually making apprenticeship where a government is taking the role of a facilitator. If the ITIs are being given to the private sector, the government is taking the role of a facilitator. So therefore, we should red flag the input which Dr. Ranganath gave, that in some places there has been a win-win. Actually, win-win should be the rule, and an exception should be in some places it is not happening. So if that is not happening, we should red flag it. NAPS is a promotion program, but if that promotion program, by giving financial subsidy to an industry to promote apprenticeship as a stopgap measure till they begin to see the win-win in the long run, if it becomes more regulatory than the Act itself, so like the NSQF alignment, when it is required, if someone takes NAPS benefits, it has to be very loose. It cannot become an over-regulating overrider against the spirit of the changes made in the amendment. So these are certain things which one needs to be a little careful about. Then there are basically three segments which we need to strategize as far as apprenticeship rollout is concerned. One is for blue collar, where we have to talk about blue collar, that is community colleges, school dropouts. For them, the strategy is going to be different. Learn and earn is a very important thing for them. There are from the poorer segments. There is a white collar where our normal colleges will play a very integral role. And I think it's a fantastic suggestion which is being made by more than one speaker, that this kind of thing needs to be made compulsory. It is not a wish list. It has to be made compulsory. It has to be the part of an education process. We have to be very careful to loosen the apprenticeship structure by saying that we should not give stipends. It's a burden on the industry. No, I think it's a long haul. The industry needs to understand it's a win-win. In Germany, it works. And the ROIs are positive. The industry is beginning to see it. We should not be in a hurry to actually simplify the program, which looks easy. Maybe the stipend is coming in the way. No, the stipend is not coming in the way. What is coming in the way is lack of advocacy, lack of awareness in the program. If you take out the stipend, if you equate apprenticeship with low-hanging fruit like internships, I think we will lose this opportunity of getting the education and industry bridge, which is apprenticeship, the only demand-driven program in the ecosystem. You will lose the grip on that program. Please do not be in a hurry to change things and apparently simplify things. Then, of course, there are some administrative issues. The NAT and NAPS should come into one. The state and center should have one vision of the rollout. The portal, which is should be seamless and efficient, because that is the junction where everything comes together. So that is a very critical instrument. And the last thing which I have to say is that any opportunity we have as India today is a demographic advantage. There is a time dimension to the entire thing. So we need numbers, and we need meaningful numbers to be churned out. The rollout has to be big. In this case, the international efforts at international sending students abroad or international skill capital for the international world, I think we should be disappointed at what we have achieved over the 5 to 7 years, because the numbers are in hundreds. It should have been in lakhs by now. So similarly, in apprenticeship, I think if we get it right, the industry itself will come forward, the youngsters will itself come forward. We should remain facilitators, and we will achieve the numbers of 20 lakhs. I think that is not going to be a challenge. Thank you very much, sir, for listening to me so patiently. Thank you again.
Thank you. We have gone 5 minutes over time, so 2 more interventions. Anyone,
Hello.
since we started late. Yeah.
Hello, can I come in, sir?
Yeah, who is speaking?
Yeah, this is Safwan Yusuf Sheikh. I am CEO of Ali Yusuf Enterprises.
Yeah, please,
and I
please,
also Safco Skill Academy and a skill development company.
Yeah, Mr. Yusuf, please start.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Sir, I just wish to highlight 2 important perspectives when we take skills as in discussion. So first of all, it's that the life cycle of skill is directly connected by the demand driven by the technology used in the industries. And today, as we all know, the technology life itself is limited until the new technology takes over. And sir, here I wish to bring to your notice that there exists an organized overseas recruitment industry since 1978, which is currently licensed under MEA, that is Ministry of External Affairs, called Human Resources Agency, with license bank guarantee of 5 million rupees. Sir, as per MEA data, HRA facilitates up to 2 million jobs in overseas market alone per annum, and majority they cater are semi-skilled and unskilled masses, which in return attract inward remittance to India over 50 billion US dollar per annum from GCC countries alone. Sir, now in the perspective of skill, HRA also indirectly upgrade the skill of the employee when they get exposed to the latest technology by, we can say, on-job training with the like overseas employer. And when that particular migrant, when he come back to India, sir, he is actually future nirbhar. He can contribute to the future nirbhar Bharat and an asset to India itself with no cost to government of India. Sir, to conclude, I will request if Human Resources Agency HRA to get one window access at the same time with the same license to avail MSD various scheme and the programs to get an opportunity and opportunity to get in grants, incentives as an encouragement to facilitate various training and placement program overseas. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Yusuf.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Yusuf. Only thing that, as you said, that this 2.5 million are unskilled and semi-skilled.
Yes.
Our aim is to focus. That is okay. That the industry is doing a fantastic job. People are going on their own. But how to leverage the skilled professionals and how to send them, that is the idea. And other geographies where we are not going, where formally skilled people and formally qualified people are required. We are not trying to mend what is not broken. But there also perhaps more skilled persons going to GCC may lead to better remuneration to our people. But that is a chicken and egg theory. Since the unskilled person are going, they're getting lower wages, and the employers are happy. So they don't want to take skilled person with higher wages. But there are other geographies, other job roles where people are not going. We need to tap that. And your advice on that day was very good, and perhaps some additional advice also will be very important. Anyone else wants to say anything? Yeah, Mr. Ranat, you want to say something?
I'm Sanjay Sir from Haryana State.
Yeah, Sanjeev, please. Yeah.
Sir, I wish to add some.
Yeah,
Sir,
please.
we have noticed one issue regarding security of the apprentices on shop floor. So there must be some insurance coverage of the apprentices during apprenticeship training. I suggest like railways. When we onboard the railway, we got option of insurance. So similar provision can also be made while approving the contract of apprentices. We can give the option to the apprentice to opt for
The insurance part. I think he has got cut. Only one more thing I wanted to ask Mr. Rajkumar, perhaps, that the languages is a major issue. All of you have told that languages had feedback which I got was that language training is really costly, especially for Japanese and German, etc. So whether any
Yeah.
idea whether the existing structure in the public institution, language institution, can be leveraged and tied up with a skilling system to get the training done at a lower cost, and whether we can do an advanced training in anticipation of people get picked up, if that strategy will be useful or not. Your reply will be the last answer today, as you were the last panelist. Please, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, when it comes to especially these two specific countries which you mentioned, initially we don't have those sort of institutions, not those many institutions in India, which offers those sort of professional training in language. All these days in India, I think language is considered to be like an hobby. I think people used to learn French or German as a part of learning an international language. I think nobody there was not a much reason to learn the language to build a career. So I think the demand is changed, the expectation is changed, and as of now, we don't have that sort of basic infrastructure and capability to train these sort of professionals on the language for a career. I know that especially Japan is putting a lot of efforts to train the teachers so that they can train the students back. So I think now the efforts may have to be put on training the trainers, which especially focused on the language training when it comes to career. So this is I think we may have to create right from the infrastructure. And in fact, I think this also goes back to the other countries because, for example, in case of Japan, they have a certification process. We need to certify them that the candidate has cleared one particular language level. But unfortunately, I think even during last one of my meeting, I mentioned to you, those sort of certification centers are also very less. So we as a government of India may have to collaborate more with these sort of countries so that more certification is possible. I think it will take, we are still in the basic thing, but we still lag infrastructure when it comes to the training and the evaluation capability when compared to languages. That is the current situation now.
Thank you, Mr. Rajkumar. Thank you, Mr. Pai, Dr. Rafael, Mr. Sabarwal.
Hi, can I add one last statement to Mr. Rajkumar? Yes.
Yeah, please, Gaurav,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
Okay, so I am just adding one statement in Mr. Rajkumar's speech and the last conversation as well. So as he said that Japan is a very different country from India. Even myself also working in a sending organization, and our organization is a basically Japan-based organization where we are working in this particular program from last 20 years. So I just wanted to highlight one thing, that in another countries also, like China, Vietnam, Myanmar, it was the same standard initially, where it took a few years to grow this program, few years to have good candidate from all over the country. Similarly, in India also, all the sending organization are basically pushing the Japanese employer as well, and to aware the Indian youth also in this program. But yes, language is basically a difficult substance that we need to take care of, because without language, there is nothing in Japan, and even employer wants the perfection in the Japanese language, as well as the certification which Mr. Rajkumar has already said. So yes, some kind of awareness are very much required from India side also, which obviously all the sending organization are doing, and even I would personally request you to to the Indian government as well, to aware the youth generation of India for this program. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, one last point, please forgive me.
Yeah.
You know, we all seen language apps where you speak in Japanese and that app speaks to you in English. Why can't you train up people like that? You know, this is a solved problem. Language is a solved problem. There's an app. You've seen it on TV in ads, right? About, women dressed in the kimono, they talk and giggle. So we can train all these people on this app till they pick up the language. The key thing for Japan is to tie up with Japanese agencies, with the Japanese ministry, which you have done, push them to take targets. Then I think we can do that, because language is a solved issue.
Okay,
I think the last, just the last. Sorry.
We discuss offline because this is okay.
Yeah.
Rajkumar.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the last thing. I think, as mentioned by Gaurav and Mr. Dr. Mohandas Pai, especially when it comes to countries like Japan and even Germany, even though the individual has a capability, he has a capability when it comes to the functionality and technology. Without the language capability, he is not able to bring it out when it comes to, especially in the service industry, when we talk about caretaker, or when we talk about even construction or food industry. I think the major part there is, though they have the functionality part, I think the language, it makes them to really perform when it comes to quality in these countries. So I think language is a key. And yes, as Dr. Mohandas Pai rightly mentioned, I think this time it is not just that we learn a language for a hobby, but we have to really learn it to the level of trying to smoothly communicate, especially when it comes to caretakers, because they have to deal with people who are in amnesia, who don't speak languages, who are almost 80 years old. I think these things are real challenge when it comes to Japan in terms of language. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Rajkumar. I think Dr. Pai's suggestion can be incorporated to have a shorter and less costly language program instead of having one lakh to. Okay, thanks everyone. I think this is the kick-starting of a consultative process on the budget announcement, these two topics. Tomorrow we are having a big session with two sessions, rather, one with the states and one with other stakeholders on the private sector on the same topic, these two topics. And my job now is another 40 minutes to summarize what all you have said into 10 minutes and present it before a group of ministers who will be listening to and there are 6 such groups who are working on the budget announcements on HR areas, education, research, etc. All those areas, skills being one of the areas. Thanks a lot. Thank you a lot, especially the panelists who would take time out at a short notice, and also the people who intervened, and also a lot of people who are linked to us through YouTube and through a non-interactive mode link also, which we have sent. So thanks all everyone to have participated and listened to us. And anyone who wants to send can send their suggestions on mail also at sccy-msd@nic.in at my email address. They can send on any topic, both panelists, internists, those who intervene and listening as on the passive mode. Thanks a lot. Thank you. I have 45 minutes.
Thank you very much for the interesting discussion, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.